When I say coaching, what does it make you think of? Some people automatically think of sports. Others might think of someone like Tony Robbins, or if you're an entrepreneur, maybe Marie Forleo. Still others will think of the relationship they have with their mentor. The reality is that we often hear or use the term coaching without being really clear or specific on what that means to and for us, or being clear on what a coaching conversation really is. For the benefit of this lesson, I want to use a really simple definition of coaching, and that is a process that aims to improve awareness and performance and focuses on the here and now rather than the distant past or future. A coaching conversation is generally about learning and growth above anything else. I want to make one thing very clear. We are not going to cover every aspect of coaching conversations in our time together. That would be impossible, but my promise to you is that we will cover the key foundational skills that you as a leader need to have in order to step into effective coaching conversations. My name is Celine Williams, and in the course of this lesson, I'm going to teach you the basics of coaching conversations so you can start to begin to master this skill set that is invaluable in today's workplace. I've spent the last 15 years working with entrepreneurs, leaders, and growing organizations to help them accelerate their performance and get incredible results. I've worked with startups to help them improve their story and pitches to get the $1 million funding they were looking for. I've advised leaders in Fortune 100 companies on how to frame difficult conversations with their team. I've worked with growing organizations to design their culture, not end up with something by default. I've had the privilege and honor of working with passionate and driven people from all over the world and all walks of life who understand that if we aren't getting the results we want, if we aren't having the conversations we want to have, we have to start making some changes. People just like you. So what is a coaching conversation? Now that we've defined coaching, let's talk about what a coaching conversation is and is not. A coaching conversation is not an opportunity to air your grievances about someone or tell them what to do. It's not a place for judgment or imposing your solution on a situation. A coaching conversation is a conversation that is truly focused on the person receiving the coaching. It's intentional and specific and is focused on the other person's strengths, challenges, and attributes. Fundamentally, a coaching conversation is all about development. One of the reasons that coaching conversations have become so important to organizations in the last 10 years or so is that studies are showing that they have a real impact on retention, job satisfaction, and engagement. As companies have moved away from the traditional command and control practices, a culture focused on coaching has become increasingly important. So the great news is that the more practiced we as leaders become at having coaching conversations, the more value we will have to organizations. So how do we structure a coaching conversation? The truth is that there are many models out there when it comes to having a coaching conversation. But I'm a big believer in keeping things simple. So that's what I want to do here today. I'm going to teach you the simplest and most widely applicable structure for a coaching conversation. First step, listen. Actively listen to what the person is saying. Don't listen to respond. Don't hold on to something that you want to remember to say in the conversation. Listen to what they are saying in the moment, how they are saying it, what their body language is telling you. Be present for the conversation just the way it is. The second thing is be curious. Ask questions about the person's perspective, experience, the situation they are describing. Don't make any assumptions about what has happened. Rather, use this opportunity to learn more about the real problem they are describing, rather than the symptoms that are typically presented up front. The third piece is reflect. This is the point where you respond to what the person has told you thus far so that they feel understood and empowered inside the conversation. Confirm that they are on the right path, that you understand their point of view. Share your experience or perspective with something similar without making it all about you or your story. Fourth, summarize. This is such an important part of a coaching conversation and one that no one should ever skip. It's important, given the amount of information that's been shared at this point, to ensure that you are both on the same page and clear about what you're talking about before moving forward. And the last piece in the framework of a coaching conversation is action. At this point, the person being coached has the opportunity to identify a path forward, the steps they want to take, the plan they want to execute. Putting what you spoke about in this conversation into action is key. Here's the really interesting thing. This model works inside of any kind of coaching conversation and, in fact, many non-coaching conversations as well. It is the absolute foundation of a coaching toolkit. I highly recommend practicing this as often as you can because of how simple it is. You can use it in family and friend situations as well as work ones. The more you practice it, the more that the structure becomes natural for you to use, the more effective your coaching conversations will be. Coaching conversations come in a wide variety of textures, topics, and tones, just like coaches do. Because of that, it's impossible to capture an exhaustive list of skills that coaches need to have and execute inside of a coaching conversation, as so much of it depends on the person being coached and the topic that they bring forward. It's like trying to say there's one exhaustive list of leadership skills. There's not. That being said, there are a few keystone skills that benefit anyone who is looking to improve their ability to coach, or really even to lead. The first is stay present. This is such an important skill for us to master in this day and age of information overload. So many of us are bombarded by distraction after distraction, and it can be hard, if not impossible, for us to turn all our attention to one thing at a time. That being said, one of the most important skills to master is the art of staying present to the conversation you are having. Minimizing distractions is one piece of it, as is effective listening, but also being comfortable with silence. People need time to process and think, and often inside of coaching conversations, we cut them off because of our lack of comfort. When I first started being trained as a coach, I had to take a course on listening and being present. I rolled my eye when I heard I was going to be spending 8 classroom hours, not including the extra learning and labs, on these topics. I thought, you've got to be kidding me. I know everything I need to know about this already. Little did I know how wrong I was. I learned very quickly that I was easily distracted both by outside sources as well as the thoughts in my head, and that I really struggled to listen deeply because I had a tendency to move forward too quickly instead of meeting the person where they were at in the moment. Don't underestimate this skill. Being present takes practice and work and is an ongoing process for me even now. Secondly, ask questions. There's a reason that so many books are written entirely on the art of asking questions. Most of us do not ask great questions. We lead people down the paths we want them to follow. We ask questions to confirm our assumptions. We ask yes or no questions. We ask questions that require little to no reflection on the other person's part. There's nothing wrong with any of these questions. Under the right circumstances, they all have a place. But they are not the ideal types of questions to be asking a lot of in a coaching conversation. You want to be asking questions that are open-ended, that incite introspection, that connect dots or go beyond the surface of a situation. Generally speaking, the most powerful questions are what or how questions. Why questions are good, but they can sound accusatory, so when you're new to these kinds of conversations, don't use them as much would be my suggestion. Questions like, what has worked for you in the past? What aren't you considering about the situation? How do you want to feel when this is all over? What impact is this having on you? What have you tried so far to move you forward? The third skill, reframing. The idea behind reframing is to shift someone's point of view or perception. The thought is that a person's point of view depends on the frame it is viewed in. When the frame changes, the meaning and thinking changes along with it, and as a consequence, the behavior as well. Reframing, by the way, is key to innovation, which is the added bonus if you're having conversations in a fast-paced or tech-based environment. A few really easy ways to start practicing reframing are to use the rule of 3. When someone tells you that they've exhausted all options and only tell you 1 or 2 things, ask them to come up with 3. Because once they start there, 5 or 10 seems much easier, and inside one of the other options might be the frame that they can't see right now. Change the question. As simple as, is this the right problem to be focused on? Can change the framework we are working in. Put a different hat on. Ask them how someone else with a different area of specialty or experience would be thinking about the situation. By stepping out of their own narrative, about their limitations, about what they can or can't do, they might just see a whole different side of things. Offer a story. One of my favorite practices is to offer a story that acknowledges their perspective and offers a different one at the same time. I was talking to a client recently who was sharing a perspective about hard work, that they believe that if you don't have a job when you're 14 and you get into hard work bright and early, you're never going to work hard. And I said, I understand that. And let me tell you a story about my best friend. My best friend grew up very privileged. She had everything you could ask for. And there is not a harder working person I know. She found the connection through effort and reward because she learned discipline through sports. And he said in that moment, I had never thought of it that way. Lastly, accountability. The skill of holding people accountable and setting up what accountability needs to look like cannot be underestimated for anyone looking to engage in a successful coaching conversation. The next lesson in this module is all about accountability. So I highly recommend that you spend some time there with the brilliant instructor Chris Niles, who's going to go much more in-depth on this topic. There's no doubt in my mind that the importance of leaders being coaches is going to continue to increase in the next 20 years, not decrease. It's never too late to start practicing the art of coaching conversations. And it's also never too early. The more we practice having conversations in this way, the better we get at having them. Remember that coaching conversations are about learning and development, and they are intentional and clear. When you are in any kind of work environment especially, both of you should know that this is going to be a conversation involving coaching. When you're having coaching conversations, you can always rely or default to the simple model I presented you as a guide for your conversation. If you follow the steps of listening, being curious, reflecting, summarizing, and actioning, you can't go wrong. Finally, the foundational skills that you can focus on to really start to improve your coaching conversations are staying present, asking questions, reframing, and accountability. I'm so excited for you to get out there and practice these new skills of yours. The transformation that is possible as a result of coaching conversations never gets old. And that's coming from someone who has been having them for over 10 years. Keep on practicing and never forget the most important part of the learning process: have fun.